Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is It's Kirk McCauley, right? Also known as the Seed Sower Coach, right? After spending more than 35 years as a human resource executive, Kirk began a new chapter helping people discover their purpose and pursue the lives they were created for. He's a certified coach, author of Thoughts of My Kids and Other People's Kids, right? An ESPN production assistant and even a spinning instructor. At 68, he continues to prove that it's never too late to discover what you were made for. Right. So, Kek, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Joy, it's my privilege to be with you today.
Oh, thank you, Ken. All right, so I want you to take us back, right, to when you were much more younger, basically. What was life like for you, in your 20s? And, what were the experiences that shaped who you are today?
Well, I knew even less then than I do now, which isn't a whole lot. But going back to my 20s, I was in college then and enjoying that lifestyle. I met my wife there, and she is just an unbelievable individual. And we have been married now for 46 years after having met in college. She is a creative person and highly accomplished in her own right. She's an interior designer and has a remarkable eye. So, we meet in college, we start our life together and career. And for me, it was in human resources. You mentioned
Mm,
that in my bio earlier. And I was in that career for some 35 years. Late
mm,
in that career, I'd reached a point where I was ready to try something else besides doing HR. So in my mid to late 50s, I hired a coach myself and contemplated several different directions that I could go in as to what I wanted to do when I grew up, so to speak. And it was about the third meeting I had with my coach that I said, I want to do what you do. I want to become a
mm,
coach. And so that journey launched. I got a little bit of additional education to prepare myself for that and eventually became certified. I just re-upped my certification last week
mm,
as a professionally certified coach. And so I've been doing that for about 10 years. Coincident with that, while I was in college, I had a roommate who was a broadcast communications major. And he got some lucky breaks in his career. And so there reached a point where during my HR career, he said, I could use somebody of your capabilities to help me with production broadcasting of these sporting events that I do, primarily football, American football. And so that started in my early 30s. I've been doing that in a part-time capacity ever since. And this next season will be my 38th year of doing that, 30 of which have been with ESPN. So that is a high-level summary of my bifurcated occupational life. And then there's spinning that you mentioned as well. So I teach group
mm.
exercise classes, and I started doing that. That was about 17 years ago. And I had a class, in fact, earlier today.
Wow. All right. Okay. So thank you, Kek, for carrying us along and diving into your 20s, basically. And one thing I learned, right, was the fact that you were willing to try out new things. You didn't just stay, I wouldn't say stuck, but you did not just face one particular thing. You were able to try out different things, and they all worked out well. Right. So that is something I think I can learn from it, with the willingness to try out new things, and you never can tell what would work out for you later on in life. Right. But, I would like to ask this one. Was there a point in your life where you faced a major challenge?
In my 30s, I
Mm,
was at a point, the kids were young, And I made the mistake of sizing myself up against other
Mm,
people. That was an educational moment for me. But as I made that assessment, I realized in my own mind, or I came to the realization in my own mind, I'm not as successful as my
mm,
peers, whatever success was defined as. So I went into a clinical depression at that point
mm,
in time, which actually turns out to be a gift because I have a lot of empathy for people who have gone through that or are going through that experience as well. But this was an interesting moment, Joy, because I was part of a men's group and there was an individual who was a pastor in that group. And he said to me, I'd like you to meet with somebody who I think can say something that may have impact, may make a difference, pardon me, in your own life. He says, I'll pay for it. No, I'm not going to turn down a free meal. So I engaged with this fella, and he was asking me about what I was experiencing at that moment, what I was going through. And I said, I feel lost and somewhat in the wilderness, alone. And more so than any other point in my life, I feel like I'm really leaning on God and asking Him for help and direction. And the counselor responded to me, then God has you exactly where He wants you to be. Now,
mm,
I would like to say that life changed immediately. It did not. But I've carried that for over 30 years now. And when I've faced difficult times and challenges, I've grown from that low spot that I was in to realize that I'm going to give it to God as a person of faith, and He's going to carry me through. And He has. So that was a difficult time, but I now look back and appreciate having had the experience of that time.
mm. Wow. Oh, all right. So yes, thank you, Kirk, I would say. And that phase of your life, right, is currently some people are currently in that phase right now, especially young adults, especially with the advent of social media. The constant comparison is high. It's way up there. People are constantly comparing themselves to people they see online, right? And it's tough, honestly. So, what advice would you have for people currently in that phase of their life?
What I seem to hear more, if there's one word that comes from 20s and 30s, millennials and Zs, I'm stuck. I just kind of feel frozen. I can't move. And so last year, my word of the year was move.
Mm,
And for some people, that's difficult, particularly those who may be really down and just the mere act of getting out of bed each day is difficult for them. Break it down into a manageable piece. That is, get up out of bed, move, brush your teeth, splash a little water on your face, put your clothes on, get prepared for the day. You have already accomplished something just by doing that, by moving. If you're a person of faith, maybe a devotional reading can be
mm,
helpful, but something to develop some momentum. If you have a list of things to do, look at that as an opportunity to check some things off the list. For me, I always like to start with the easiest thing first, and that was look at your list. I could check
right.
that off. That was already one thing that was done. Make a phone call. And what you'll find, I think in many cases, that starts to develop some momentum, some initiative to go out and do things. The second word of the year for me, and it's for this year, is connect. What is that?
Mm,
That's reach out to somebody else. And we often think that we're creating an obligation for them
mm,
to meet with us, to talk with us. And I found when I've done that, it is so appreciated by that individual. Thanks for your interest in me. And it feeds me as well because I have had an impact on somebody. And that's the second thing I hear from people besides I'm stuck is I want to have impact. Well, it's hard to have impact on 8 billion people, which is the world
Right.
population, but you can
Mm,
have impact on one and you're going to feel good about it. And then you're going to have another day tomorrow. You can do that as well. And you do that every work day. You will have done that over 200 times during the course of the year. You've had some impact on a large community of people that have been blessed by your being in contact with them. So move, connect, that fulfills your impact.
yeah. Move, connect. That's the key word for today, basically. I mean, I think I need to write that down somewhere. I mean, when I wake up, the mantra is to move and to connect. Right. So, wow, thank you, Kirk. And that is deeply insightful. And I believe it's going to change life. If anyone listens to it and they're in that phase of their life, it will actually help them make better informed decisions. Right. So yes, I want us to talk about, career growth and the lessons that came alongside it. So how did you, okay, yeah, you mentioned that already, how you found your way into human resource. So was there a season in your life where you felt like you were truly living your purpose?
It was late in or later in that HR career, and
Mm,
it always seems to be these moments where you don't think you're having an effect. There was a person that came to my office, and I had worked with the next generation of prospective leaders in the organization I was with at that time. And it was a young man who had a girlfriend. They had a child between them, and she was expecting another baby. And he came to my office and he said, something you had said to me has motivated me to go ahead and get married to her. And I said, well, I'm glad that I had some influence. But what was interesting, I never remember having had that conversation with him. Maybe I did say it, but if I did, I don't recall it. So the takeaway lesson to me is you're having influence and impact in moments where you least expect that you're having that impact. And I'll always remember I get up and give a talk to a group of people, and I always walked away thinking, I nailed it. It was always the time where I felt like I stumbled through something. I was stuttering. I was not as articulate as I wish I was, that people would come up and say, that was a great talk. And I would say, thank you. I don't know what they heard, but it wasn't what I think. So you surprise yourself sometimes. That has been the biggest takeaway through all these events. You're making a difference at those moments when you least think that you are.
all right. Yeah, okay. So yes, thank you, Kirk, for that one. And at the beginning you mentioned faith, right? You mentioned that there was a time you prayed and you also met with someone in church, right? So I believe faith has played a major role in your life, right? So how important is our faith when it comes to life decisions, basically?
I've got a recent story to share. This was 11 weeks ago, and
Mm.
I'm a cyclist. I go out and ride, and I ride fairly long distances. So, for the
Wow.
audience that measures according to the metric scale, I was on a 100-kilometer ride, and I
Mm.
had about 3 or 4 kilometers left to travel. I had held my hand out to my left to signal that I was preparing to make a left turn, and a pickup truck behind me misread what I was signaling, and he proceeded to hit me in his pickup truck. Bikes don't fare very well versus pickup trucks. And that's the last thing I remember until probably 45 minutes had passed, and there were helicopters circling overhead and paramedics and medical personnel. asking me my name, my date of birth. I remembered that. And the next thing I knew, pardon me, I was in the first helicopter ride of my life, being taken to a trauma center where I was diagnosed with a concussion, took 16 stitches in my head, uh, have a shoulder that juts up now because it was a separated shoulder, a partially torn rotator cuff, and 5 broken ribs. The good news, I survived it. Um, the bad news, it hurt a lot. Um, but here is, I think, the most important part of that story. 2 days later, and I talked about faith, and in my faith, there's the Holy Spirit that's at work. This was all that presence that was in me that prompted me, because I don't ordinarily do stuff like this, to call the person who hit me because I saw his name on the police report and to basically ask, "How are you doing?" Come to find out, he's a military veteran. He had seen my left turn signal. Um, in his mind, he knew what it was, but for some odd reason, he proceeded to strike me from behind. And he said, "That's just not like me. That's out of character." And I said he felt so bad. He was having some trauma himself as a result of that. I said, "It's an accident. These things happen, and I want you to know you're forgiven by me for that." We have since entered into a relationship. In fact, he's coming over to the house for supper later this week. We've gone to lunch together, and just God at work in odd ways that I want you to meet this guy. I never would have expected to connect that way, but it's a new relationship that's been born, and it's working to the benefit of both of us. It has educated me about the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness, sure, is a release for the other person, but in this instance, it has freed me so much. Do I wish I wouldn't have gotten hit by a truck? Yes. But do I see the benefit that came from that? Yes. And every time I look at this crooked shoulder, I'm going to remember what took place and try to apply that in my life going forward, because I've been given another second chance as a result of that. And so that is an impactful story for me over the last several weeks, for sure.
Whew, okay. I don't even know how to react to that, honestly. I'm perplexed, right? And wow, first of all, thank God you're alive. You're here sharing your testimony with us because I believe it's a testimony, actually. And wow, forgiveness. I mean, it takes a lot of strength to forgive, especially something like that. It takes strength and love also. You have so much love to give for you to be able to forgive, right? Wow, I think that is something worth emulating, honestly. I'm gonna try my best to, emulate that. It's hard, but it's possible. I mean, wow, okay. So thank you, Kek. I think that story changed my perspective on life, honestly. And it's amazing, I would say. Wow. Ooh,
Well, and
okay.
what I learned, it wasn't me, it was the power of the Holy Spirit at work within
Mm,
me, because I wouldn't ordinarily do something like that, but something possessed
mm,
me. You need to reach out to this guy and meet him and talk to him. And we've done
mm.
that. And he raises chickens. He's given us some eggs. So, we've broken bread together.
Wow.
Interesting guy. I've enjoyed getting to
Mm.
know him.
Right. Wow. Okay. And you know the funny thing, apart from you, right? I believe this will change his life too. I mean, it's going to change his life so well that he might even begin to preach it to other people, right? Like someone forgave me for this. I feel like it's life changing, honestly. Wow.
Well, and as I've got to know him, he's a 30-year military veteran, and he's been on the front line of some pretty difficult battle situations. And so he shared with me, I'd like to do a book someday. Well, I've written a
Mm.
book, and so that just automatically created that bond of encouragement. I want you to write a book. And
Right.
so every time I'll see him, has your book coming along? So
Mm.
we've got that in common as well. And I think
Wow.
he's got a great tale to tell, predicated upon the experience he's had in the military.
Mm. Wow. Ooh, all right. Yes, thank you, Kirk. And I think that's an amazing way to meet a friend. Although it's tough, but it's an
I
amazing one.
I don't recommend meeting friends that way, but it happens in strange and unpredictable ways, that's for sure.
Actually. All right. So yes, thank you, Kirk. I would say this has been amazing, honestly. And I would like to ask, right, thinking about the future, what legacy do you hope you leave behind, right? What would you want people to remember you for?
Well, I hope I have lived my life so that my memorial is standing room only
Mm,
and that people at that point in time are joyful, having been in my presence, having connected with me, and that memorial is a celebration of the life that I have lived, the stories I have been a part of, the stories I have told, and that there's fun, laughter, and celebration at that point in time. Not sadness, not tragedy, but maybe we're all just a little bit better for having known Kirk. If
mm,
that can be true when that point in time comes about, I'll be smiling down from another place, and it probably won't matter that much to me. But for those who are left behind, I hope they can have that joy and celebration, laughter, and maybe a beer or a glass of wine on my behalf.
All right. Wow. Okay, Kirk. Thank you so much, honestly. And I believe, you're doing it right. I believe you already have that legacy, honestly, and it's amazing. And personally, I know I would always remember this. And if I'm talking to any guest, I'll say Kirk said, Kirk would forgive, right? So let's just forgive. I'll always remember you. All right. So yes, thank you, Kirk. And before I ask my final question, I'd like us to, touch on the Seed Sower Coach, right? So what inspired you to become the Seed Sower Coach, basically?
Well, I've talked about faith, and there's the parable of the seed sower that
Right.
makes sense for how I'm trying to nurture my clients. And I
Mm,
hope that clients come to me in maybe a more raw version than
right.
what they're going to be eventually, but like the seed that comes forward and is nurtured, is watered, is fertilized, and produces abundantly fruit.
Mm,
So it's the parable of the seed sower that was the inspiration on that from Luke in the Bible. The
mm,
other thing is I'm an active gardener myself. And
mm,
so out in the backyard, we've got tomatoes and green beans and okra and eggplant and herbs and blueberries and all kinds of stuff going on
mm,
right now. And I've been doing that. It's ever since I was a little kid. I'm just fascinated with watching things grow and what do I have to do to make them grow better. So it was a natural selection to come up with that name based on faith, what I'm aiming to do, and then what my hobby is of
mm.
tooling around in the garden.
Oh, all right. Wow. Okay, that sounds amazing, honestly. And finally, right, I would like to, ask this one. Okay, so why do you believe it's never too late to, pursue your dreams or reinvent yourself?
Well, you took a year off my age. I'm actually 69, so I'll
Mm.
be 70 later on this year. And I tell people kiddingly, because I've got all these varied interests, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. I'm pursue I'm pursuing wisdom. There is a song by the musical group Kansas that
Mm.
says, "If I claim to be a wise man, it surely means that I don't know." So I'm pursuing wisdom. I'm pursuing opportunity. I'm looking, as I said earlier, for impact. How can I be of assistance and serve somebody in whatever capacity that may be? Hopefully as a coach, but I never know. It just may be a certain look, a moment of listening, a moment of coming to contact with somebody. So I'm living my most enjoyable life at this point in time because I get to meet people like yourself from all over. I get to coach folks like that. I get to work in sports, which I love. I get to cycle. I get to teach spinning classes like I did this morning. And I wrote a book, Joy. Me write a book? I guess so. So that would be my response. And I hope I'm blessed with many more years and good health in order to do that. But I'll be ready when I'm taken home.
Wow. All right. So yes, thank you, Kirk. And just so you know, right, a lot of people actually looking like they're looking forward to living the kind of life you have right now, right? A lot of people that's their goal, that's their dream to, just be at peace and just do whatever it is you want to do, right? So, thank you, Kirk. This has been amazing, honestly. And yes, before I ask my final, okay, actually, I'm asking my final question, right? Which is, what advice would you have for people out there? I know you've given advice already, but I believe you still have more, right, to give to people out there currently listening, right, who want to, just better their lives. Right? What advice do you have for the younglings, basically?
Well, I've already mentioned move, connect,
Right.
but I'll put one more out there, and that is we have one of these and we have two of these.
Mm,
So I encourage people to use those tools proportionately. That is to strive to listen well, because you may come across something that's interesting that becomes your story just by what people have to share and what they have to talk about. When I have looked at leadership teams, the most impactful people on those teams tends to be the person that is quiet, and maybe towards the end of that hour-long meeting, they'll say, "I'd like to say something." Everybody turns and looks, and you know it's going to be something that's profound, and it leaves you talking more about it as you leave that meeting. So be a good listener and strive to not use the first person pronoun as much as you can. That is I, me, mine. Instead, I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm listening to what you're telling me as opposed to me, I. So those are my four pieces of advice: joy, connection, uh, listening well to others, and being other focused.
Wow. All right, another that's over here we say another banger. Meaning you just dropped another, very huge piece of advice. And yes, thank you, Kirk. That has been amazing. And it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. We call it the rapid fire segment. You can either answer with a word or a phrase starting now. Okay. So what is one word that describes your life journey?
Um, One word, humor,
Hmm.
humor, humor.
Okay. All right. So what is your favorite book?
The Firm by John Grisham.
Hmm.
He's a writer here in the States that talks about legal situations that take place, and I just love him as a writer, and I love how he became a writer. But out of his whole library of books, that may be my favorite. I think it was his third book.
Wow. All right. Okay. So morning workouts or evening workouts, which do you prefer?
If I had my choice, it would be evening. but I don't
Hmm.
have my choice, so they have to be morning.
All right. Okay, so what is one habit that has served you well?
Organization,
Mm.
um, not going into a day, not knowing what the plan is for that day. There's always a list, things that need to be done. So having that organization and having a responsibility to attend to that day.
Well, organization. Right. And finally, what brings you the most joy these days?
Being in the company of people who I share interest with, I'll
Mm.
put that right at my wife right at the top of the list. We have a lot of commonality. We've got a lot of years between us, and just being able to kid and laugh about
Mm.
things is a cherished time for me.
All right. Well, good. Okay, okay. Thank you. And finally, before you go, where can listeners get to, learn more about you and also connect with you?
I've got a couple of websites. I've got the
Mm.
seedsowercoach.com, which is my coaching website, and there's a Kirk McCarley author.com, which is conduit to get my book, Thoughts for My Kids and Other People's Kids. I'm on a variety of social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, but listeners and viewers, reach out. Love to hear from you, particularly you good folks in Africa in the Eastern Hemisphere. I love to connect with people from Nigeria or the other countries, such as where you are, Joy.
All right. Well, so yes, thank you, Kirk. And I'm going to put the link in the show notes so it's easily accessible for listeners. And yes, to my listeners, I would say thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Once again, thank you, Kirk. This has been absolutely amazing. Do have a beautiful day ahead of you.
Thank you, my friend.
Oh. All right. Take care. Oh.